I was sitting in a hospital waiting room when my mother-in-law said, "Your family now." That felt wrong. She never called me that before. Then my sister-in-law leaned in and whispered, "You need to get tested." I blinked. Tested for what? She didn't hesitate. For his kidney. And suddenly, everything made sense. Even now, when I think about that moment, that is the part that gets under my skin the most. Not the doctor saying kidney failure. Not the machines. Not the way my husband looked when I finally saw him. It was that sentence. Your family now. Not before. Not at Christmas when I sat at their table feeling like some polite stranger they were obligated to tolerate. Not on birthdays. Not during the years I kept showing up, trying to be warm, trying to be helpful, trying to ignore the little cuts because none of them were bad enough on their own to justify a real fight. But suddenly, in a hospital waiting room, with my husband lying behind double doors and the word transplant hanging over all of us, I was family. I should start a little earlier because otherwise it sounds like I hated them from the beginning, and I didn't. I really didn't. When I first met Mark's family, I actually tried hard. Maybe too hard. I brought things to dinner. Remembered birthdays. Offered help. Sent thank you texts. The usual stuff. Nothing huge. Just normal, respectful effort. The kind you make when you love someone and want things to be easy. His mother, Donna, always had this way of smiling without warmth. She was never outright rude. That would have been easier, honestly. She was polished. Controlled. The kind of woman who could insult you in a tone soft enough that if you repeated it back to someone else, you sounded dramatic. "This roast turned out better than I expected," she'd say after I cooked. Or, "Lisa is very independent," in that tone that somehow made it sound like a flaw. His father, Carl, barely spoke to me for the first year. Not in a cruel way exactly. More like he had decided I was temporary and didn't see the point in learning me. He'd ask Mark about work while I sat right there. Ask if Mark was eating well, sleeping enough, handling stress. If I answered, he would nod without looking at me and keep talking to his son. And Clara, Mark's younger sister, was worse because she hid behind fake friendliness. She called me sweetie in this clipped little voice that made it obvious she did not mean it. She loved asking questions that sounded harmless until you realized they were designed to make me feel out of place. Do nurses usually work weekends that often? Do you ever think about doing something less stressful once you have kids? Does your side of the family do holidays differently? Everything with her felt like a test I hadn't studied for. Mark saw it. I know he did. That's the part that made it complicated. He was not clueless. He was not one of those men completely blind to his family. He noticed. Sometimes under the table, he'd squeeze my knee or my hand like he was apologizing without saying it. Sometimes in the car after, he'd say, "They're just set in their ways," or "My mom doesn't mean it like that," or "Clara's insecure around new people." New people. We had been married 2 years the first time he said that. I remember turning and looking at him like, "New?" He gave me this tired look and said, "You know what I mean." I didn't know what he meant. He meant don't make me choose. He meant let this stay manageable. He meant if you can survive a few awkward dinners, I don't have to confront the fact that my family treats my wife like she's optional. And, because I loved him, I let too much slide. That sounds weak when I say it now, but I think a lot of people do this in marriage. You tell yourself not every problem has to become a war. You tell yourself families are messy. You tell yourself you can absorb a little discomfort to protect the bigger thing. So I did. I stopped expecting warmth. That was the first real shift. Once I stopped hoping Donna would suddenly hug me like a daughter or Carl would start including me in conversations or Clara would become normal, things got easier. Not better. Easier. Mark and I built our own routines away from them. We had a small house on the outer edge of Denver, nothing fancy, but it was ours. A quiet street. A patchy yard Mark kept swearing he would fix. A kitchen too small for 2 people to move around in comfortably. A sagging couch we kept saying we would replace. That became our little world. I worked long shifts at the hospital. Mark drove for a delivery company and complained about traffic like it was a personal enemy. We'd eat late. Watch dumb shows. Fall asleep with half-finished conversations. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt real. Ours. Separate from the weird heaviness of his family. There were good years in there. I want that on record because otherwise this becomes too simple. Mark was not some monster. He could be gentle in a way that made me forget everything else. He was the kind of husband who noticed when I was too tired to cook and brought home takeout without making a big deal out of it. He knew how I liked my coffee. He rubbed my shoulders when my lower back ached after a long shift. He could be quiet for hours and still make me feel accompanied. That's part of why what happened later hurt as much as it did. If he had been cold all the time, I think I would have left sooner. But he wasn't. He was loving in private and passive in public. That's a brutal combination, because it keeps you attached while slowly teaching you what he will never protect you from. The day everything changed started completely normal. I was halfway through a shift when one of the other nurses handed me my phone and said, "You need to take this." I almost didn't. We were busy. The floor was short-staffed. I figured maybe it was spam or maybe Mark forgot something at home. But the look on her face told me it was not nothing. The voice on the phone was male, rushed, professional, but strained. Is this Lisa Young? Yes. This is Denver Memorial. Your husband was brought in from his workplace after collapsing. You need to come as soon as possible. I don't remember what I said after that. I remember my body moving before my brain caught up. I remember taking off my badge with shaking hands. I remember someone saying they'd cover the rest of my shift. I remember grabbing my bag and walking too fast, then running, then feeling stupid for running because I still didn't know what had happened and my mind was throwing out random possibilities. Car accident. Heart attack. Head injury. Something falling at work. Anything. The drive is mostly a blur. Traffic lights. Brake lights. Me gripping the steering wheel so hard my palms hurt. I kept calling Mark's phone even though I knew no one was going to answer. At one point I called him 3 times in a row like repetition could somehow change reality. When I got to the hospital, his family was already there. Of course they were. Donna stood up the second she saw me, and for one weird moment I thought maybe she was going to hug me. But she only reached for my hand and pulled me toward the chairs like I was late to a meeting. She's here, she said. Not Lisa's here. Not thank God. Just she's here. Carl looked grim. Clara looked tense in a way I had honestly never seen before. I waited for someone to explain, but they were all talking around me, not to me. Doctor. Numbers. Function. Evaluation. Timeline. I had to interrupt just to understand what we were even talking about. What happened? Clara answered before anyone else. His kidneys are failing. I stared at her. What? Donna squeezed my hand harder. The doctors think it's been building for longer than anyone realized. Anyone. I looked at Mark's mother when she said that because something about the wording bothered me immediately. But before I could ask what that meant, Clara said, you need to get tested. That was the moment from the hook. The one that keeps replaying. I remember the fluorescent lights. The awful coffee smell. The TV mounted in the corner playing some daytime show no one was watching. I remember Donna's nails pressing into my skin. I remember Clara's face, all urgency and no empathy. Tested for what? I asked, even though some part of me already knew. For compatibility, she said. If you're a match. Not can you. Not would you. Just the next step, already decided. My mouth actually went dry. Why me? Donna answered like I was being slow. Because you're his wife. Closest match, her tone implied. Most obvious choice. Most convenient body in the room. And the thing that makes me feel ugly admitting this is that my first reaction was not pure fear for Mark. It was anger. Not because he was sick. Because I could feel it instantly. The shift. The way the room had rearranged around me. I was not the worried wife who had just run in terrified. I was a possible solution. I said I needed air and walked straight back out to the parking lot before anyone could stop me. I sat in my car for I don't know how long. Maybe 40 minutes. Maybe an hour. Long enough for the steering wheel to dig ridges into my palms. Long enough for my breathing to slow down and then speed back up again. Long enough for me to ask myself questions I hated. If I'm a match, can I say no? If I say no, what kind of wife does that make me? If I say yes, am I doing it for him or because his family has decided my body belongs to this marriage too? I loved Mark. That was never the question. But love gets complicated when people start acting like access to your body is proof of it. Eventually, I went back inside because whatever I was feeling, he was still in there. A doctor finally spoke to me properly then. David Smith. Calm voice. Steady eyes. He explained that Mark's kidney function had dropped dangerously low. They were stabilizing him. More tests were being done. It was serious, but not hopeless. There were treatment options. Evaluation would take time. Nobody was putting him into surgery that second. That should have made me feel better. Instead, it just stretched the fear out longer. When I finally saw Mark, he looked wrong in a way that scared me more than any medical word had. Pale. Drained. Smaller somehow. There were tubes in his arms, tape on his skin, that flat hospital light washing all the warmth out of his face. He opened his eyes when I walked in and tried to smile. Hey, he said. Just that. Like I had come home from work and caught him on the couch. I sat beside him and took his hand. Hey. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but suddenly none of them seemed like something he should answer while lying there attached to monitors. So I asked the simplest one. Did you know something was wrong? He hesitated. That pause hit me immediately. I was tired a lot, he said. And I'd been feeling off. How long? He looked away. A while. That quiet little answer sat between us like something rotten. Because now I had 2 separate shocks fighting for space in my head. One was that my husband was seriously sick. The other was that this was not as sudden as everyone had made it sound. I squeezed his hand. How long is a while, Mark? He licked his dry lips. A few months. Maybe more. I just stared at him. A few months. Maybe more. Doctor visits? None that I knew of. Serious conversations? None. Warnings? Nothing. He had been coming home tired and irritable and saying work was exhausting. He had been taking more naps on weekends, complaining about headaches, skipping dinner some nights because he wasn't hungry. I had asked him if he was okay so many times. And every time, he told me he was just stressed. That hurt in a different way. Not bigger than the medical crisis. Just sharper. More personal. You should have told me, I said quietly. He closed his eyes for a second. I know. That was where the first crack really opened. Not because he was sick. Because he had decided, for whatever reason, to carry it alone until his body made the choice for him. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to cry. Instead, I just sat there holding his hand while machines made soft noises around us and wondering how much of our marriage had been built on me accepting whatever he didn't want to face. That night, Donna came in twice. Clara came in once. Carl stood in the doorway and barely said a word. Every time one of them looked at me, I could feel the next phase already beginning. Testing. Compatibility. Donation. Obligation. No one said it in front of Mark then, but it was there in the room anyway, hanging over the bed like another machine. And the awful part is, even then, some stubborn piece of me was already preparing to do it. Not for them. For him. Because for all my resentment, all my exhaustion, all the years of swallowing my discomfort around his family, I still looked at my husband in that hospital bed and thought the same thing any loving wife would think. Please don't let him die. The next morning started like nothing had changed, except everything had. I woke up on a stiff hospital chair with my neck aching and my mouth dry, still holding Mark's hand like if I let go something worse might happen. The machines were still making that steady, quiet rhythm, and for a few seconds I just watched his chest rise and fall to make sure he was still breathing. That's how fast things shift. You go from arguing about groceries and weekend plans to checking if your husband is alive between blinks. Mark stirred a little and opened his eyes. You didn't go home, he said. I shook my head. Didn't feel right. He looked at me for a second like he wanted to say something more, but instead he just nodded and squeezed my hand weakly. Thanks. It was such a small word, but something about it made my chest tighten. Not because I needed gratitude, but because it felt distant. Like I was helping a patient, not sitting beside my husband. Before I could say anything else, there was a knock and Donna walked in like she had been waiting right outside the door. You're awake, she said to Mark, her voice soft in a way I had never heard directed at me. She went straight to his other side, leaning in, brushing his hair back gently. How are you feeling? Okay, he said. Just tired. That's normal, she replied quickly, like she had already memorized everything the doctors had said. Then she looked at me, not at my face, at our hands, still intertwined. And for a split second, I thought I saw something there. Not anger exactly. Not jealousy. Just calculation. She smiled right after, like nothing had passed through her mind at all. Lisa, you should get something to eat. You've been here all night. I'm fine, I said. You won't be any help to him if you collapse too, she added, still smiling. Any help? There it was again. I let go of Mark's hand slowly, more because of the way she said it than because I was actually hungry. I'll grab coffee. Mark nodded. Bring something back for yourself too. I forced a small smile and left the room. The hallway felt colder than I remembered. Brighter. Too clean. I walked past nurses' stations and rooms and families clustered together, all of them living in their own version of the same moment. I got coffee I didn't really want and sat down near a window, staring out at the parking lot. That same place I had been sitting in my car hours earlier, trying to figure out what kind of person I was going to be in this situation. I didn't get much time to think before Clara sat down across from me. She didn't ask if she could. You should schedule the test today, she said, like we were continuing a conversation that had never stopped. I looked at her over the rim of the paper cup. Good morning to you too. She sighed, already irritated. Lisa, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just being realistic. The sooner we know, the better. I set the coffee down. Yes, we. This is about Mark. I know it's about Mark. Then you understand why this matters. I held her gaze. I understand that my body is suddenly part of the plan, apparently. Her expression tightened. That's not fair. Isn't it? You're his wife, she said again, like that one sentence answered everything. That means something. It didn't seem to mean much before yesterday. That slipped out before I could stop it. For a second, she didn't respond. Then she leaned back slightly, crossing her arms. This isn't about the past. It kind of is, I said quietly. She shook her head. You're making this emotional when it's not. That almost made me laugh. Not emotional? I repeated. You're asking me to consider surgery. To give up an organ. That's not emotional. It's medical, she shot back. People do this all the time. People also get asked, I said. Not told. Her jaw tightened. No one is forcing you. It was the way she said it. Calm. Controlled. Like technically, yes, I had a choice. Just one that would define me forever. Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut in. Hey. I turned and saw Sarah standing there, still in her work clothes, her hair pulled back, looking like she had rushed over the second she heard. I hadn't even realized I had texted her until that moment. She came straight to me, her eyes scanning my face. Are you okay? I nodded, even though I wasn't sure what that meant anymore. He's stable. They're still running tests. She glanced at Clara briefly, then back at me. Good. That's good. Clara stood up. I'm going to check on my brother. Brother. Not our husband. She left without another word. Sarah sat down in her place immediately, leaning closer. What's going on? I let out a slow breath. They want me to get tested. For what? I hesitated, then said it. Kidney donation. Her eyebrows shot up. Already? Yeah. That was fast, she said. Too fast. She studied my face. What do you want to do? That question again. Except when she asked it, it actually sounded like a question. I don't know, I admitted. I mean, it's Mark. I know, she said gently. But it's also everything else, I added. The way they're acting. The way this suddenly makes me important. Sarah nodded slowly. So it doesn't feel like they see you. It feels like they see what you can give. Exactly. I didn't even realize how much I needed someone to say it out loud until that moment. Yes, I said. She leaned back slightly, crossing her arms. Then don't let them rush you. They're not technically rushing me, I said. They're just not giving me space to breathe. That's the same thing, she replied. I looked down at my hands. If I don't do it. She didn't let me finish. If you don't do it, you made a decision about your body. That's it. It's not that simple. No, she agreed. It's not. But it's still yours. That stayed with me. Because up until then, everything had started to feel like it belonged to someone else. My time, my emotions, my choices, even my body. We sat there for a while in silence, just drinking bad coffee and watching people move through the hospital like they were all part of some quiet system none of us had agreed to join. Eventually, I went back upstairs. Donna was in the chair next to Mark again, talking softly. Carl was standing near the window. Clara was scrolling through her phone. They all looked up when I walked in. And I could feel it immediately. Expectation. It didn't matter that no one said anything right away. It was in the way they watched me. Like they were waiting for an answer I hadn't given yet. Mark looked between us, then at me. Everything okay? I nodded. Yeah. I sat back down beside him, but something had shifted. The room felt smaller. Heavier. After a few minutes, Donna spoke. The transplant coordinator should be coming by later today, she said, her voice calm but purposeful. I didn't respond. She'll explain the evaluation process, she continued. It's very straightforward. Still not a question. Still not asking me if I wanted to hear any of it. Mark finally looked at me directly. You don't have to decide anything right now. That sounded better. But then he added, they're just giving us information. Us. I nodded slowly, even though something about that word didn't sit right either. Because this didn't feel like us. It felt like me. And everyone else watching. A couple hours later, Emma Clark came in. She introduced herself, explained the process, the tests, the timelines, the risks. She spoke clearly, professionally, like she had done this 1,000 times. And maybe she had. But for me, every sentence landed differently. Evaluation. Compatibility. Surgery. Recovery. She kept looking at me when she spoke, even though Mark was the patient. Because she already knew. I was the potential answer. When she finished, she asked, do you have any questions? Everyone looked at me. Again. I swallowed. If I say no, what happens? There was a pause. Not long. But enough. Emma answered carefully. Then we continue exploring other options. The registry. Other potential donors. Treatment plans. Professional. Neutral. But not reassuring. Because what she didn't say was just as loud. It would be harder. Slower. Riskier. Mark was watching me closely now. Not pushing. Not asking. Just waiting. And for the first time since this started, I realized something that made my stomach twist. No one was going to make this decision for me. But everyone was going to judge me for it. And that somehow felt worse. They scheduled the first round of tests the same day. Not because I agreed right away, but because I didn't say no. That's something I didn't understand at the time. Silence becomes permission when people are already moving forward. And I was too overwhelmed, too tired, too emotionally tangled to stop it fast enough. Emma came back with forms. Blood work. Initial screening. She explained everything again in that calm, practiced tone, like she was guiding me through something routine. This doesn't commit you to anything, she said. That sentence should have made me feel better. It didn't. Because it felt like the beginning of something I might not be able to step out of later. I signed anyway. Not for Donna. Not for Clara. Not even for the way Mark kept looking at me like he was trying not to hope too much. I signed because I wasn't ready to say no yet. That's the truth. The lab was colder than the rest of the hospital. Too bright. Too clean. I sat in a chair while a nurse tied a band around my arm and asked me to make a fist. First time doing something like this? She asked casually. I almost laughed. Yeah, I said. She nodded like she had heard that 1,000 times. You'll be fine. That's what everyone says before something big. You'll be fine. Like it's a promise. Like it means something. I watched the blood fill the vial and tried not to think about what it represented. Not just a test. Not just numbers. A decision waiting to happen. When I got back to Mark's room, Donna stood up immediately. Well, she asked. I blinked at her. It's just the first test. But you did it, she said, relief already creeping into her voice. That bothered me more than I expected. Not because she was relieved. Because she assumed that meant something had already been decided. I said I'd do the evaluation, I clarified. That's it. She gave me that same tight smile. Of course. But I could see it. In her eyes. She thought it was already done. Clara didn't say anything, but she gave me this small nod, like I had finally done something right. Carl stayed by the window, hands in his pockets, staring out like none of this had anything to do with him. And Mark. Mark just looked at me. There was something softer there now. Gratitude, maybe. Hope. Something that made my chest ache. Thank you, he said quietly. I nodded, but I didn't trust myself to speak. Because part of me wanted to say, don't thank me yet. You don't know what I'm going to decide. The next few days turned into a routine I never expected to have. Hospital. Home. Hospital again. Tests. Conversations. Waiting. I went back to work between everything, but it felt strange being on the other side of it. I had spent years caring for patients, watching families sit in those same waiting rooms, making decisions I never had to think about personally. Now I was one of them. Ben caught me staring at a chart one afternoon longer than I should have. You good? He asked. I blinked. Yeah, just tired. He didn't buy it. You've been off all day. I hesitated, then said, Mark's in the hospital. His expression shifted immediately. What happened? Kidney failure. He let out a low breath. That's serious. Yeah, he studied me for a second. They testing you? I looked at him. How did you? He shrugged. Happens more than you think. Of course it does. I started the process, I said. And, he asked. I don't know. He nodded slowly. That's a big decision. Everyone keeps acting like it's not, I said. That's because it's easier for them if it's not, he replied. That hit harder than I expected. He leaned against the counter, lowering his voice. You don't owe anyone a body part. I know that. Do you? He asked. I didn't answer. Because knowing something and feeling it are not the same thing. Later that night, I went back to the hospital and found Mark awake, staring at the ceiling. Hey, I said softly. He turned his head. Hey. I sat down beside him again, the same chair, the same position, like nothing had changed. But everything had. They said the initial results should come back soon, he said. Yeah. There was a pause. Then he asked, are you okay? That almost made me laugh. I should be asking you that. I know, he said. But I'm asking you. I looked at him carefully. For the first time since all of this started, it felt like he was actually seeing me in it. Not just waiting. Not just hoping. Seeing. I don't know, I admitted. This is a lot. I know, he said again. But it doesn't feel like anyone else knows, I added. It feels like everyone's already decided what I'm supposed to do. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, it's your choice. There it was. That sentence. The one he kept saying. And every time he said it, it sounded right. But it didn't feel right. Does it feel like my choice to you? I asked. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? I mean, if I say no, what happens? He looked away. And that was answer enough. Still, I pushed. Mark. He sighed. I don't know, Lisa. Try, I said. He swallowed. I mean, I'd be disappointed. There it was. Honest. But heavy. And your family? I asked. He let out a quiet breath. You know how they are. Yes. I did. And you? I pressed. He hesitated. Then he said it. I thought you'd want to help me. That sentence landed harder than anything else. Because it wrapped everything into one simple idea. Love equals sacrifice. And if I hesitated, what did that say about me? I felt my throat tighten, but I kept my voice steady. I do want to help you. Then. But that doesn't mean I know how far I'm supposed to go, I cut in. He went quiet again. And in that silence, I realized something that scared me more than the surgery itself. We were not on the same side of this. Not really. He was the one who needed something. I was the one who had it. And somewhere in between, our marriage was being tested in a way neither of us had prepared for. The results came back 2 days later. I was a match. Not just a possible one. A strong one. Best case scenario, Emma said when she told me. Best case. I stood there in the hallway, nodding like I understood what that meant. But all I could think was, best for who? When I walked back into the room, I didn't even have to say anything. They could tell. Donna's face lit up immediately. You are. I nodded once. She covered her mouth like she was about to cry. Clara actually smiled. Carl turned from the window. And Mark. Mark looked at me like I had just saved his life. Before I had even made a decision. And that was the moment everything shifted for real. Because now, it wasn't just a possibility anymore. It was real. It was expected. And suddenly, saying no felt like taking something away. After the results came back, everything started moving faster. Too fast. It was like the moment the word match entered the room, the decision was no longer something I was allowed to sit with. It became a plan. A timeline. A series of next steps that everyone seemed relieved to follow. Emma came in with more paperwork. More explanations. Surgery windows. Recovery expectations. Risks, but said quickly, like they were just something to acknowledge before moving forward. Donna stayed close to me the entire time, like if she physically remained near me, I wouldn't drift away from the decision they all wanted. This is such a blessing, she kept saying. Do you know how rare this is? I nodded. Of course I knew. I worked in a hospital. I had seen people wait months, years, hoping for a donor that never came. I had seen families pray for miracles. And now I was being told I was one. That I should feel lucky to be able to give something like this. Lucky. That word sat wrong in my chest. Because it didn't feel like luck. It felt like pressure dressed up as gratitude. Clara was even more direct. We should start planning around the surgery date, she said one afternoon, scrolling through her phone like she was organizing a vacation. If we do it soon, his recovery will line up better with work. I stared at her. We. She didn't even look up. You know what I mean. No, I said quietly. I don't. That got her attention. She lowered her phone slowly. Lisa, I'm just trying to help. It doesn't feel like help, I said. It's just practical, she replied. This isn't something we can drag out. We. Again. I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. You keep saying we like this is a group decision. It affects all of us, she shot back. It affects me physically, I said. That's different. The room went quiet. Donna stepped in immediately, her tone softer, but no less firm. No one is forcing you. That sentence again. Always technically true. Always carrying something underneath it. I looked at her. It doesn't feel like I have space to think. You've had space, Clara said. No, I replied. I've had time. That's not the same thing. Mark was watching the whole thing from the bed, silent. That bothered me more than anything they were saying. Because this wasn't just his family anymore. This was us. And he still wasn't stepping in. Later that evening, when it was finally just the two of us, I sat down beside him and didn't say anything right away. I just looked at him. At the way his face had a little more color now. The way he seemed more awake. More present. Hope does that. It changes the air around people. You okay? He asked. I exhaled slowly. I need you to talk to me honestly. I am talking to you honestly. No, I said. You're being careful. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means you keep saying it's my choice, but everything around me says it's already been made. That's not fair, he said. Isn't it? I asked. He shifted slightly, wincing. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me what happens if I say no, I said. There it was again. That question. The one everything kept circling back to. He looked at me for a long moment, then away. I told you, he said. I don't know. That's not true, I said quietly. You just don't want to say it. His jaw tightened. Fine, he said after a second. You want honesty? Yes. He looked back at me. I'd feel like you gave up on me. That hit hard. Not because I didn't expect it. Because he said it so plainly. Like it was obvious. Like that was the natural conclusion. I wouldn't be giving up on you, I said. That's how it would feel, he replied. There it was. Not logic. Not fairness. Feeling. And feelings don't care about context. They don't care about risk or pressure or history. They just exist. And your family? I asked. He let out a quiet breath. You know how they are. Yes, I said. I do. And you still want me to go against them right now, he added. That made something in me shift. Because it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about him choosing a side. And he already had. I want you to stand with me, I said. I am standing with you, he replied. No, I said. You're standing near me. That landed. I could see it in his face. But instead of responding, he just looked tired. I don't have the energy for this, he said. And, just like that, the conversation ended. Not resolved. Just paused. Like everything else. I went home that night for the first time since he had been admitted. The house felt different. Too quiet. Too still. I walked through each room like I was seeing it from a distance. The couch. The kitchen. The hallway. All the little pieces of our life that suddenly felt fragile. I stood in the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. But more than that, I looked unsure. Like I didn't recognize the person staring back. Because the question I couldn't escape wasn't just about the surgery anymore. It was about everything. Who I was in this marriage. What I was allowed to say no to. What love was supposed to look like when it cost something real. My phone buzzed. A message from Donna. Have you thought about scheduling? Not, how are you? Not, are you okay? Just the next step. I stared at the screen for a long time before putting the phone face down on the counter. The next morning, I met Sarah for coffee. I needed air. Space. Someone who wasn't already inside the situation. She was already there when I arrived, 2 cups on the table. You look like you didn't sleep, she said. I didn't, I admitted. She slid one of the cups toward me. Okay, tell me everything. So I did. Everything. The pressure. The conversations. Mark's response. The way it all felt like it was closing in on me from every direction. When I finished, she sat there quietly for a moment. Then she asked, if none of them were in the picture, what would you do? That question hit differently. Because it stripped everything down. No Donna. No Clara. No expectations. Just me. And Mark. I don't know, I said honestly. Try, she said. I stared into my coffee. I think. I'd still be scared, I admitted. Of the surgery? Yes. And what comes after? She nodded slowly. That's normal. But I wouldn't feel like this, I added. Like I'm being pushed. That's the part you need to pay attention to, she said. I looked up at her. You don't make life-altering decisions under pressure, she continued. Not good ones, anyway. I don't have forever, I said. No, she agreed. But you have enough time to be sure. I leaned back in my chair. And if I'm not sure? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Then you don't do it. That felt too simple. But also, not. Because underneath everything else, that was the truth I kept avoiding. If I wasn't sure, why was everyone acting like I should be? When I went back to the hospital later that day, the energy in the room felt different again. More focused. More expectant. Like they were waiting for me to fall in line. And for the first time since this started, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not fear. Something quieter. Stronger. Like I was starting to understand that whatever decision I made, it had to be mine. Even if it broke something. The shift didn't happen all at once. It wasn't some dramatic moment where I stood up in the middle of the room and made a speech. It was quieter than that. It started with small things. I stopped answering Donna's messages right away. I stopped engaging when Clara tried to plan things that hadn't been decided. I stopped filling the silence with reassurance when Mark looked at me like he was waiting for me to say the words he wanted to hear. And the moment I stopped doing that, everything around me changed. Not in a good way. The warmth disappeared. Whatever version of family they had suddenly decided I was part of, it faded the second I stopped moving in the direction they expected. Donna's tone became sharper. Still polite, still controlled, but thinner. Less effort to hide it. Clara didn't bother pretending anymore. You're overthinking this, she said one afternoon, standing at the foot of Mark's bed. It's not that complicated. I looked at her. It is for me. She rolled her eyes. People donate kidneys every day. And people also get to choose, I replied. You are choosing, she said. You're just dragging it out. That word hit me. Dragging. Like I was wasting time. Like I was making things harder than they needed to be. Like Mark's situation was somehow being extended because I wasn't moving fast enough. I felt my chest tighten, but I kept my voice steady. I'm taking the time I need. Clara let out a small, frustrated laugh. Must be nice to have that luxury. Luxury. That was new. Before I could respond, Donna stepped in, her voice soft but firm. Clara, that's enough. But she didn't defend me. She just wanted the conversation to stay controlled. I understand this is difficult, Donna said, turning to me. But we also have to be realistic. There it was again. Realistic. Another word that sounded reasonable on the surface, but underneath it meant one thing. There's only one right choice. I nodded slowly, even though I didn't agree. Mark hadn't said anything during that entire exchange. He just watched. That silence was starting to feel louder than anything his family said. Later that night, when it was finally just us again, I didn't sit right away. I stayed standing near the window, looking out at the city lights. You're mad at me, he said. It wasn't a question. I shook my head. No. Then what is it? He asked. I turned back to him. I feel alone. That landed. I could see it in his face. I'm right here, he said. That's not what I mean, I replied. He sighed. Then explain it to me. So I did. I feel like I'm the only one actually dealing with this, I said. Everyone else already knows what they want from me. They're scared, he said. So am I replied. He didn't answer that. I stepped closer. But no one's acting like that matters. I said it's your choice, he said again, like that settled everything. I let out a small breath. You keep saying that. Because it is. Then why does it feel like I'm going to lose something no matter what I choose? I asked. He looked at me, but he didn't answer. And that was the answer. I sat down slowly, suddenly exhausted. I need to ask you something, I said. Okay. If I say no, are you going to resent me? He didn't respond right away. His eyes dropped to his hands. Then he said quietly, I don't know. That again. I don't know. But this time, it didn't feel like uncertainty. It felt like avoidance. Try, I said softly. He swallowed. I don't want to think about that. But I have to, I replied. Because I did. That was the difference. He was living in hope. I was living in consequence. I just thought, he started, then stopped. What? I asked. He hesitated. Then he said it. I thought you'd want to do it. There it was. Not you should. Not you have to. You'd want to. Like love would make the decision obvious. Like hesitation meant something was wrong with me. I do want to help you, I said carefully. But, he asked. But I don't know if I can do this, I finished. He looked away. And in that moment, I felt it. That quiet shift. Not anger. Not even disappointment, exactly. Something heavier. Something that settled between us like a line we hadn't crossed before. The next day, Emma came in again. She went over the next steps. Scheduling. Final evaluations. Surgery windows. It all sounded so final. Like we were already past the part where I was supposed to decide. When she finished, she looked at me directly. Do you feel ready to move forward? She asked. The room went completely still. Donna looked at me. Clara looked at me. Even Carl turned from the window. And Mark just watched. Waiting. Always waiting. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel rushed. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I didn't feel like I had to soften my answer. I just felt clear. No, I said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't emotional. Just steady. Emma nodded, like she had expected that answer as a possibility all along. That's okay, she said. We can take more time. Donna's face changed immediately. Not dramatically. Just enough. Clara exhaled sharply. Carl looked away again. And Mark didn't say anything. That silence came back. But this time, it felt different. He wasn't waiting anymore. He had his answer. And I had mine. But the real moment didn't happen in that room. It happened later. When it was just the two of us again. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said quietly, I thought you loved me. And that was the moment everything finally broke. When he said that, I didn't react right away. Not because it didn't hurt. Because it did. It just didn't hit the way he expected it to. I do love you, I said. My voice came out steady, which surprised me. A few days ago, that sentence would have broken something open in me. I would have rushed to explain, to soften it, to fix whatever he thought was wrong. But now, I just said it. And let it sit there. He looked at me, searching my face like he was trying to find something that used to be there. Then why wouldn't you do this? He asked. There it was again. The same question, just framed differently. I took a breath. Because loving you doesn't mean I stop being a person, I said. He frowned slightly. I never said that. You didn't have to, I replied. The room felt quiet in a different way now. Not tense. Not chaotic. Clear. I've spent years trying to fit into your family, I continued. Trying to make things easier for you. Trying not to make you choose. That's not fair, he said. It is, I said. And you know it. He didn't argue. That told me everything. I let a lot go, I added. Things that bothered me. Things that hurt. Because I thought that's what you do when you love someone. That is what you do, he said. Not like this, I replied. He looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, I don't think love is supposed to feel like this, I said. Like I have to prove it by giving something up that I'm not sure I'm ready to give. He went quiet. And I could see it happening in real time. The shift. Not in me. In him. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to meet him where he was. I was standing where I was. And asking him to come to me. I'm scared, I said. That was the first time I said it out loud without trying to hide it. Of the surgery. Of the recovery. Of what happens after. Of what this turns into if I say yes just because everyone expects me to. He swallowed. I didn't realize you felt like that, he said. I've been trying to tell you, I replied. He looked down at his hands. And for a moment, I saw something I hadn't seen since all of this started. Not expectation. Not quiet pressure. Just him. Stripped of everything else. I just didn't want to lose you, he said. That hit differently. Because that was honest. I'm still here, I said. For now, he replied. There it was. Not loud. Not dramatic. But real. And I realized something in that moment that I think I had been avoiding the entire time. This was never just about the kidney. It was about what our relationship actually was when things got hard. Not when it was easy. Not when we were in our own little world, away from everything else. But when something real, something heavy, something permanent showed up. I can't make this decision out of fear, I said. Fear of what? He asked. Fear of losing you, I answered. He didn't respond. Because he understood. And maybe that was the problem. Because if the only way to keep someone is to give something you're not ready to give, what are you actually keeping? We didn't resolve everything in that conversation. That's the truth. There was no big moment where everything clicked back into place. No dramatic apology. No sudden understanding that fixed it all. It was quieter than that. More real. The surgery didn't happen. They found another donor through the registry a few weeks later. Not a perfect match like me, but good enough. The doctors were optimistic. His family stopped pretending with me after that. The warmth they had suddenly shown disappeared completely. Back to how it was before. Maybe worse. Donna went back to calling me Mark's wife. Clara barely spoke to me unless she had to. Carl stayed in the background like always. And Mark. Mark came home eventually. Recovery was slow, but steady. We slipped back into our routine, at least on the surface. Same house. Same kitchen. Same late dinners. But something had changed. Not loudly. Just enough that I could feel it in the quiet moments. In the pauses between conversations. In the way he looked at me sometimes, like there was something he didn't say. Not resentment exactly. But not the same either. And me? I felt different too. Not guilty. That's the part people expect when they hear this. But I don't feel guilty. I feel clear. For the first time in that family, I chose myself. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. Just because I needed to. And I don't know what that means for the future. I don't know if our marriage will stay the same. I don't know if he'll ever fully understand my decision. Or if part of him will always see it as something I didn't do for him. But I do know this. If I had said yes just to keep the peace, just to prove something, I don't think I would recognize myself anymore. So now I'm here, living in the aftermath of a choice that didn't explode everything, but definitely changed it. And I keep coming back to the same question. If you were in my place, would you have done it? Or would you have chosen yourself too?